I think I met Tate Mandela shortly after I was released in prison. So we had a rally to celebrate his release in Limpopo at the University of the North, and I was sitting next to him. Now, he has always been a great inspiration when he was in prison. And I think when I sat down with him and we were conversing, I was amazed at how ordinary a human being is and how humble he was. Of course, it was before he became president. And what I can say about him is that he has been a great inspiration. I always say that he is a gift to South Africa and to humanity that God has given us. He has passed on now, and even though as much as we are mourning his death, I think it was time that he rest. He has played his part, and I do hope that personally and in many other people's lives and in the leadership, we can reflect very seriously on what he stood for, what made him great, and the values that has always been part and parcel of his life and leadership.
Today, as sad as we are, I remember Madiba, and the things that I remember most about him are things that make me smile. His essential humanness, his humor and his humanness. Remember one day, many years ago, he phones me in my office at Liberty Life then, and he says, I want to take you to the Northern Province, as it then was, to show you how the poor people live. So I could see what was coming. It was one of the famous Mandela schools coming. So I managed to duck out of it, and I'd ducked out of one previously because I'd always explained to Madiba that we're very involved in educational programs, but we don't build schools, we pay tax. Anyway, he called me hard-hearted, and 10 minutes later the phone rings in my office, and it is Roy Anderson, who was then our CEO. So I said, hello Roy, how's Madiba? And he couldn't believe that I knew that Madiba had phoned him. I don't think he was completely floored. So he said, well, Madiba wants to take us to the Northern Province to show us how poor people live. I said, no, Roy, Madiba wants a school. He said, no, Madiba's taking us to see how the poor people live. So I said, well, I don't have a budget for a school. If you've got a budget for a school, it's okay. So he said, well, I've agreed on next Tuesday morning at 6 o'clock, whatever it would be, we're going to meet Madiba at Swartkorps Air Force Base, and we're flying to, it was then Petersburg, now Polokwane. Anyway, we duly fly there, and this little Air Force jet, there's Roy and me and Madiba, and we land at the airport in Petersburg, and there's the Premier and the cabinet and this motorcade of cars and motorcyclists, policemen, and a whole gedunte, as they say. And then Madiba and the Premier get into a big limousine, and other dignitaries get into limousines, and Roy Anderson from Liberty and me are shown into our limousine, but our limousine has been taken from a local limousine hiring company called Ferry Funerals. And the back window of the vehicle said Ferry Funerals, and with a big flag in front of the car that said Ferry Funerals. So I said to Roy, Roy, we've been taken like lambs to the slaughter. And Madiba's whisked along, and there's motorcyclists. It's the only time I've ever been in a blue light convoy. Anyway, we start getting closer to what must be our destination, because at every 2 meters along the side of the road, there's an Air Force sort of soldier standing at attention, and then there's policemen standing at attention, and we start getting closer to a school, and we know that we're getting closer to the school because there are school children standing there, and they're drum majorettes, and we eventually arrive, and there's an enormous crowd, and there's marquees erected, and there's ululating people, and there's excitement. And in the marquee, there's a podium and there's speakers and there's SABC TV and the whole business. And Madiba's absolutely fantastic with the crowd, and Roy's looking at me and I'm looking at Roy, and we sit down, we show into seats of honor next to Madiba and the Premier in the front of this marquee, and there's a pamphlet on everybody's seat. And I open the pamphlet and it's got an order of proceedings, and one of them is a presentation of a school by Liberty Life. So I say to Roy, I don't know what you're going to say. So he said, no, it's for you. I said, Roy, you got us into this, it's up to you. Madiba gets up and he is fantastic and he speaks wonderfully about education. And he says, and I brought our friends from Liberty Life who are giving the community a school. I said, Roy, and then Roy's called on next, and Roy gets up and he gives the community a school. And that to me epitomizes Madiba. He had a sense of humor. He knew exactly what he was doing, but he knew that Liberty Life could afford the school. In a funny kind of way, he had a Robin Hood streak.
I had the good fortune of meeting Tata Madiba soon after he came out of Robben Island, when I worked at the University of Western Cape, when I worked with Professor Hervel, and I also had the privilege of working in Mr. Mandela's office post from October '94. Those will remain as good memories. He represents an inspirational giant. In a sense, there are very few leaders who have been able to touch the entire world like he has. And I think as South Africans, we're fortunate, like Mahatma Gandhi, he learnt about the struggle in our country.
Just thankful for his life, and that actually personally that we walked the ground that he walked on, very, very privileged for that. He leaves us with a huge legacy of values that I think we need to take forward.
When you've been alive for 95 years, that is already such a milestone. But when you've been alive for 95 years and you've done so much, sacrificed a lot, achieved a lot, it's a life to be celebrated. So I think whilst when one heard about the news of Mandela having died, it wasn't as if it was unexpected. I mean, we're born in order to live and die, but I think the reality hit about the fact that actually, for me, it just said, geez, it just sharpens the need to focus on what's important today. Because actually tomorrow does or doesn't come, and you just got to keep focused on doing what you believe you need to be doing today. And so we celebrate his life. So I mean, he has died, but I think we really need to be celebrating his life.
This morning when I woke up and saw the news, I was in awe, because then one is confronted with the passing of an icon that has impacted humanity. And we as South Africans are indebted to our icon. And today we can only aspire to his greatness. And we might never achieve that level of greatness, but the inspiration that was left for us, and his inspiration in greatness, but his greatness was demonstrated in his humility, and I think that is something that we can certainly achieve.
What I'd like to say is that I feel very privileged to have been a member of the first democratic parliament in South Africa, and it was there that I was also very privileged to meet with Nelson Mandela and to learn something about the man, sort of face to face, as it were. And it became more than an icon to me.